Live in the human paradise. Breathe the pure air of heaven. Longevity, vitality, and a lifetime of bliss.
住在人间小天堂，呼吸天堂纯气，延寿长生，幸福一生。
You know, for a long time, the story we've told ourselves is that human evolution has, well, pretty much hit the brakes. We figured we mastered our environment, right? So that intense pressure, the thing that drives genetic mutations, it's eased off. We think of evolution as this incredibly slow, random thing happening over ages. Okay, but let's unpack that. What if evolution hasn't actually stopped? What if the mechanism itself has just shifted? Become maybe far faster and much more under our control than random mutation ever was?
That is exactly the fascinating idea behind the research material we're diving into today. It's this theory of non-mutation human evolution. And it basically proposes that while our DNA, the fundamental genetic code itself, is pretty stable, the phenotype, that's the biological expression of those genes, that's actually evolving quite rapidly.
Yeah, evolution driven by environmental reprogramming, not genetic typos.
Precisely. We're seeing change that seems to be entirely driven by external factors, things like air quality, nutrition, our exposure to toxins.
Right, and that reframing is really key for you listening because, well, it means we aren't just sitting around waiting for 1,000 generations, hoping for some kind of beneficial cosmic ray. We're going to explore just how quickly this biological remodeling can actually happen. We'll look at some, frankly, surprising historical proof that seems to back this speed up. And then we'll get into what future intentional engineering of our environment, our food, our water, and crucially, our air could mean for unlocking potentially huge gains of our collective intelligence and lifespan. Okay, so let's dive into that core idea first. We're saying the genetic program is stable, but the output can change dramatically. And it's all down to what the body interacts with constantly. So like, if genes are the computer's operating system, the environment decides how well that system actually runs.
That's a great analogy. Exactly. We seem to be shifting from slow, error-driven evolution, random mutations, to a much faster, optimization-driven evolution. The theory points to some simple but really profound examples. You introduce better nutrition consistently, and the body's existing program for skeletal growth just runs better, runs at peak efficiency. And that leads directly to populations getting taller on average. Or you reduce exposure to toxins. The program for cellular repair runs cleaner, longer, and that directly slows down the biological aging clock.
Wait, so if we're not waiting on the genetic lottery here, what's the biological engine? What's actually driving this change so quickly?
That's where the science of epigenetics really comes into play. Think of epigenetics as kind of like the volume dials on your genes.
Right.
The environment can turn those dials up or down, changing how genes are expressed without altering the underlying DNA sequence itself. And what's fascinating here is that dial can apparently be turned quite fast enough that you can see significant physiological reshaping in just, get this, 3 stable generations.
3 generations?
Yeah.
Seriously. So what, maybe 60 to 90 years? If you have consistent, optimized living conditions, clean air, safe food, good medical care.
Exactly, around that time frame.
Wow. We usually think of human development over, like, tens of thousands of years. But you're saying meaningful biological upgrades can happen visibly within basically a grandparent's lifetime.
Measurable biology, yes. And we actually have some pretty striking historical data points that seem to show this rapid environment-driven change in action. Take post-industrial Britain, for instance. As nutrition improved, especially protein intake, and basic medical care got better, the average height went up by something like 7 to 10 centimeters per century.
That's pretty significant already. But didn't the pace pick up even more later once health interventions became more, well, systemic? When I read the bit about post-war Japan, it immediately made me think of my own grandparents. They often seem so much shorter than their kids and grandkids. That generational difference suddenly feels less like random luck and maybe more like a direct biological readout of conditions.
That's a perfect example. In Japan, after the war, with better hygiene and especially the shift to a more westernized diet, more protein, more calcium, the average height shot up by a staggering 13 centimeters in just 70 years.
13 centimeters in just over 2 generations.
And it wasn't just about getting taller. Look at post-war Taiwan. Their life expectancy jumped by 30 years, again, driven by public health improvements and a stable, better food supply. So these examples, they really tie back into the core theory. These physical improvements aren't just some nice side effect of prosperity. They look like rapid biological adaptations. It's the body basically fulfilling its maximum genetic potential once you remove the major environmental stressors.
Okay, so if that's what happens almost organically when societies improve conditions, what happens if we get intentional about it? If we actually engineer the environment for optimal biological function? This kind of shifts us from looking back at historical data to, well, prospective biological engineering, doesn't it?
It does. And the predictions laid out in the source material are quite dramatic. They analyze the potential effects of achieving total environmental control. For instance, they model a hypothetical air-ate-free system, basically eliminating key airborne and ambient toxins we normally live with.
Okay, like super purified living spaces.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And if you could achieve that, fully purify the air and reduce these toxins, the primary prediction is a massive drop in cellular aging stress. For adults, this could mean potentially delaying the aging process by 10 to 20 years. And children born and raised in such an environment, they're projected to gain an average of 3 to 5 centimeters in height just from that cleaner developmental start.
Height and lifespan are huge, obviously.
Right.
But the analysis really zeroed in on something else, too.
Yeah.
The brain. We tend to think of air pollution as, a lung issue, maybe a heart issue. But the claim here is that it's a direct, immediate threat to our intelligence.
It's argued to be the first organ poisoned by the air we breathe, particularly particulate matter, PM 2.5, and the even tinier, ultrafine PM 0.1.
Those are the ones everyone talks about now.
Right, because they're small enough to actually penetrate the blood-brain barrier. And once they get inside, they seem to cause this chronic, low-level microinflammation. They actively disrupt how neurons signal to each other. The sources state that long-term exposure to these common pollutants, plus things like VOCs, formaldehyde, it measurably lowers average IQ by 5 to 10 points.
Wow. 5 to 10 IQ points just wiped out by the air quality. That's a massive hidden drag on society. Is the idea that this cognitive loss is recoverable if you clean the air? Or is it just about preserving the potential that was there?
It strongly suggests the deficit is preventable, and that by removing that constant inflammation, that chronic stress on the brain, you allow it to function much closer to its actual genetic peak. And the proof is sort of the converse. Studies show people living in very clean air environments tend to have sharper focus, better memory, less cognitive decline over time. Pure air is essentially, brain fuel.
Okay, and this environmental optimization, it apparently even reshapes something we think of as totally subjective, like physical appearance or beauty. The theory argues that beauty isn't just some random aesthetic preference. It's redefined as, cellular precision achieved under low toxin conditions.
Exactly. The idea is if you reduce the body's oxidative stress by providing clean air and clean inputs, well, the biological results become visible. Things like improved skin clarity, better hormonal balance, even potentially increased facial symmetry because fetal development wasn't hampered by high toxin exposure in the womb. So in this view, those symmetrical features we often find attractive, they might just be a reliable biological signal of a healthy, low-stress developmental path.
Right, a readout of underlying health. Okay, let's look bigger picture then, the century scale projection. If we assume, hypothetically, 3 generations living in this optimized, ate-free environment, what does the human being look like? What are the projected hard numbers?
Yeah, the cumulative gains projected over those 3 generations, about 90 years, are quite staggering. They project an average IQ gain of 10 to 12 points, a height gain of 6 to 7 centimeters compared to the baseline, and critically, a lifespan extension of 20 to 25 years. Plus, and this is huge, a projected reduction in chronic illnesses by about 40%.
40% less chronic illness.
Yeah.
That seems like the real key to the next idea, right? This concept that modern humans are kind of running on fumes. The theory argues we spend maybe 30, even 40% of our lives in this state of quiet, chronic sub-health. And that's just silently draining our creativity, our productivity, everything.
That's exactly the argument. Removing that constant drag of chronic pain, fatigue, low-grade inflammation, that's presented as the lever that could shift humanity. Shift us from what they call a survival civilization, basically just getting by, into a creative civilization. And look at the projected metrics they use to illustrate this. Typical work efficiency today, considering fatigue and sub-health, might average around 60–70%.
Feels about right some days.
Well, for these optimized, healthy, long-lived humans, they project that efficiency could rise to 95%. And maybe even more impactful, The innovation cycle, the time it takes for major breakthroughs to happen, currently estimated around 15 years, that's projected to potentially shorten to just 5 to 7 years.
That kind of jump in collective cognitive power and efficiency, I mean, that fundamentally changes the speed of history itself. But what about the sort of wisdom factor? You mentioned longer lives, 150 years was discussed. What's the philosophical benefit there?
That raises a really profound point. What actually happens when a single human mind can live long enough to personally witness, say, 3 distinct industrial revolutions, or one major civilizational shift? The idea is that this kind of longevity creates a living memory core within society. That accumulated firsthand experience could dramatically reduce systemic errors, sharpen our collective foresight. As the source material puts it, short-lived species tend to survive mostly by instinct and adaptation. Long-lived species have the capacity to endure by truly understanding the long arc of change.
Okay, this all sounds fantastic for optimizing life here on Earth. But how does this whole concept of non-mutation evolution, this environmental reprogramming, connect to maybe the ultimate human goal, becoming a multiplanetary species, colonizing the universe? Because deep space travel, settlement, those involve timelines that just dwarf our current lifespans.
Right, and the theory directly addresses this. It basically posits that our current average lifespan, 70, 80 years, is a fundamental biological bottleneck. It simply cannot sustain a true deep space civilization. The voyages themselves are too long. Crucial knowledge, experience gets lost with every single generational handover. It leads to what they call broken cognitive continuity. Our current biological clock is framed as the primary limiter on our cosmic ambitions.
So the argument is we literally need to reach something like a 200-year lifespan threshold to become a truly spacefaring species.
That's presented as the necessity, yes, for serious, long-term cosmic endeavors. If a human lifespan routinely reaches 200 years, think about it. A single generation could complete a century-long interstellar mission without any handover. Cognitive continuity shifts from being broken to unified. Plus, remember the cellular repair boost, the enhanced DNA repair mechanisms that come with this optimized low-toxin environment. They're projected to increase the cell repair rate by potentially up to 300%. That offers crucial biological resistance to the kind of cellular damage caused by long-term exposure to cosmic radiation.
So longevity isn't just about living longer for its own sake.
In this context, it's not a luxury. It's framed as the true rocket engine of civilization.
Wow. Okay, so this shift in thinking about evolution is pretty profound. Human advancement isn't necessarily about waiting for slow genetic chance anymore. It's potentially about rapid environmental control. And the mechanism for this whole biological revolution seems to boil down to a kind of triad: air purification, slowing aging, and this concept of non-mutation evolution working together.
And perhaps to close on the philosophical note from the source material, the goal of slow aging, in this view, isn't really about trying to escape death itself. It's framed more as enabling humanity to finally walk a complete path through the universe. When our individual cellular lives remain stable and healthy for a century, maybe two, space travel transforms, doesn't it? It goes from being incredibly dangerous exploration to perhaps almost inevitable migration.
So the ultimate takeaway might be, to truly reach the stars, humanity doesn't just need a rocket revolution. We might first need a biological revolution. And based on this theory of environment-driven evolution, here's something for you to think about. What would be the single most critical environmental change you would implement right now if you wanted to unlock humanity's true biological potential? We'll leave you with that thought to mull over.
Air 8-free maze purifier. The world's first single-pass purifier. Combining ionization, electrostatics, and airflow maze. The machine replaces humans. To absorb and destroy every toxin, air enters the ion zone. Viruses and dust gain negative charge. They pass electrostatic filters. Then enter the toxbox maze. Aerosols dry on electrode walls, breaking down into CO2 and water. Inside the maze, air twists and strikes over 60 times. Each turn ends a toxin's life. Billions of particles in 0.1 second are fully purified. It releases Earth's purest air. The superheaven air quality. 8-free, dust-free, germ-free, toxin-free. Smoke-free, odor-free, heavy metal-free. Microplastic-free, aerosol-free. Not just an air machine. The only key to lifespan freedom. U.S. Patent No. 8268058B2.